So, welcome to Cosmic Soul Sisters. We're a portal to all things magical, mystical, and spiritual. And we're helping to raise the consciousness of humanity one conversation at a time. And I'm your Cosmic Soul Sister, Shara.
I'm your Cosmic Soul Sister, Leah.
And in today's episode, we will be talking with the incredible Lucas Mack. Lucas is an author and he's a keynote speaker, a musician. He's a host of two podcasts, The Golden Rule Revolution and The Vulnerable Hero podcast. And he's a coach and healing catalyst for people who carry concealed trauma. And through his transformative process, the 5 vulnerable truths of healing, he creates a safe and sacred, deep healing container for his clients to liberate themselves from the shackles of shame and trauma and abuse. Lucas's mission is to give people permission to put down their armor and experience the power of vulnerability and unconditional love, initiating their healing and empowering them to live with authenticity and purpose. So, without any further ado, Lucas, we are so grateful that you are here on the show. Welcome.
Thank you. I am really honored. And I felt like saying, and I am your cosmic soul brother, Lucas. But I'm really, really honored. Thank you. And it's such a beautiful podcast and content that you guys are putting out. And what a beautiful soul family you're gathering right now around you.
I feel like that's a big reason why we wanted to start our show. Is just to connect light workers and to, perhaps people will see themselves in others or be drawn into the light worker, like wake up that they're a light worker themselves, I guess.
Yeah, it's true. Everyone we are light. We're made of light. We've forgotten light in this day and age where we have lumen or LED and different colors and lumens, and we actually are kind of waking back up to, wow, there's light in this different form. And what I always tell people is, like, if I have my phone on right now, you can't really tell the light difference between this and the light in my room and the lights behind me and all these, but if the lights went out and this phone turned on, everyone would look at it. And I think that's what's happening right now, is we're really waking up to what the true light is, that we are the light. And it's an exciting time.
It is. It's a really cool way of putting it. So in case our listeners aren't familiar with your work, I don't know if you would mind going over a little bit of your backstory, because it's fascinating.
Yeah. I grew up in a home that incredibly abusive home that had the facade of perfection. And even to this day, people will come up to me and like, man, I always judged my family against your family. And I'm like, oh my God, you have no idea. And usually it's that Dateline NBC story. It's like, they look like the perfect family and they zoom in, everyone's smiling, and then it like goes to doom doom, but behind closed doors, and everything changes. So I grew up in this family structure that was, I was violated, all these, every category you can think of, but also deeply entrenched in religion and Catholicism, Protestant evangelicalism, and then Judaism. And this melding of these very powerful power structures. And I was really confused. I was scared for my life up until actually 2018. I was scared for my life. So it's only a couple of years. When I did the TED Talk, I was afraid I was going to be killed for giving my TED Talk, breaking the cycle of child abuse. And when I stepped off that stage, I felt the energy shift. I was in Pittsburgh and I'm from Seattle, and I felt the energy shift that I was no longer on the defensive, but I was then on the offensive, and not offensively going to go after them, but speaking our truth and getting to the place where, like, I don't want to live in fear any longer. I can't live in fear. I have to share my truth. It changed everything. But at the age of 20, I attempted suicide. I couldn't deal with what I was living with any longer. Miraculously did not die, where I fully solidified that there is a God, there is a power and a benevolence and a providence way grander than my physical form, because I tried with every intention to not be here. And it led me on this path. I still stuck in religion. I went down the Christian path incredibly hard. And I read the Bible cover to cover 7 times in 14 years. I didn't miss a morning or night praying on my knees and reading all religious texts. And I could give a dissertation on Protestantism and Catholicism and Judaism and the different paths and the denominations and the churches and the branches and the breakoff. It was just like, I wanted to know what was true. And at the same time, truth, I just wanted to be loved. And I always had a heart for God. I've always loved God. And I don't mean this term God in any religion or 3D terminology. I just mean love. I've always loved, but I didn't know where the source of love was. And I sought it in all these ways that I didn't find it. I just found more guilt, shame, control, judgment, conditions. And I wrote a couple months ago, to know the love of God, we must first find the God of love. And that was so radical for me to just be in that place of infinite and unconditional love and like to bathe in it and just to walk in it. And like, that's really what I find. And sorry, it's a long answer to that very simple question, but that's what I really find is what being light is. It's like love is what goes in our light bulbs, if you will, our cells, and makes it shine so that when we glow, when we shine our light, it's because we're actually in love. Mm-hmm. So I've been a TV reporter. I was a journalist. I don't know, a musician, I had a band. I mean, I've done a lot of different things, wrote a book, Keynote Speaker, and owned an ad agency for 10 years and ran that. And now I'm just living and speaking and just helping people heal and understand that courage is the path to self-love, and vulnerability is the key that unlocks all doors.
Mm-hmm. What would you say got you from the place where you were in, where you were talking about seeking love and still feeling guilt and shame and fear, to the place that you are now, where you truly embody that? You truly embody the love and light.
Thank you. Well, when I was in 2016, I was hurting. I was physically sick, diverticulitis, SIBO. I was collapsing. I went to the hospital in ambulance when my second child was just 5 weeks old, was having panic attacks. And at the same time, I started drinking a lot. I was running a business, built it to $1 million company, had all these employees, had 3 children, and I couldn't bathe my kids. I couldn't be around them if they were naked. And instead of, this is the weird thing about trauma and shame and fear. And my wife is incredible person. And she was so kind. And her and I have been on this healing journey together, but I viscerally cannot be around my children if they're naked or bathe them. And I would try to change a diaper, and I would do it really quickly and probably didn't do it as like clean as probably should. I was like quickly just trying to do it. And my wife would say, what's wrong? And I'd be like, oh, something happened to me when I was a kid. But, and it was just like, I think how people talk, my wife was like, oh, okay, I got it. Not trying to pressure me. And I'm like, in a way like, okay, good. I don't have to stay in that moment. Mm-hmm. But all this suppressed trauma, and I would feel like I was more broken and like, what's wrong with me? I felt broken. And I never looked before the age of 20, and not one literal, like without exaggeration, never thought before my suicide attempt. I would say that I died and I was rebirthed at the age of 20. And I never looked back before all that stuff. Well, with all this stuff happening in 2016, I had an emotional affair with an employee, which is not something that I'm proud of, but I shared with my wife, and that was the catalyst where I couldn't hold any of this pain and shame any longer. And I went to therapy that first week, and I then just everything. So it's a long story. It's someday I'd like to tell. It's the craziest story. I have a very crazy story, but it went from something's wrong with me and I'm broken to, wait, there's health. Like, what is health? I remember the therapist telling me In the very first day, and I mentioned this in my TED talk, the very first day of therapy, he's like, tell me about your family. So I started talking about growing up, and he's like, wow, there's a lot of depression in your home. And I look at him like, you have no idea. And I did blow the therapist's mind. 2 years, I went every single week, sometimes twice a week. And I'm friends with him now. And he's like, never had anyone like you. I'm like, I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but what he helped me understand is what health was. And what's so weird is and I'm talking a lot, so interrupt me if need
We
be.
want you to talk.
It was like my mind only worked in this spectrum. So my thoughts were only in this spectrum. And what he would tell me is like, well, a healthy father would do this. And it was like someone inserted a rod into my brain, like it was like something outside me came in me. And then I realized, yeah, of course, that's a healthy thing. But I didn't have the bandwidth to travel down that because of the trauma and the disassociation and out of my body all the time at the sign of trauma. I'm gone. I remember like coming back, and I've been having meetings all over the country and these executives, and I would come back in my body and realize that they've been talking for I don't know how long. And I was aware that I must have looked like I was listening, even though I was nowhere in that. I don't even know where I was, but I wasn't in that meeting. So it's been a journey of healing and understanding what unconditional love is. And my wife, who didn't leave me, but went on this healing journey with me, was really the first person to show me what love is. Not when it wasn't based in conditions and terms and conditions. It was based in unconditional love and soul contract. And so I don't know, I could talk about it for forever, but I've always loved people. That's one thing that I've been clear on. I've always loved people, but I didn't know how to feel love or know what love was apart from needing to know what truth was, because everything seems so confusing. And everyone, I've talked about this on the podcast a lot, like The Mandalorian, which I really do like, but I think it's doubling down on this conscious narrative, or this consciousness narrative of the way. This is the way. And I don't think that's a healthy narrative. That's a way. It's one way. It's your way. It's my way. Anyway, just deviating is just.
If 2020 has taught us anything, right? For me, anyway, that's what it has taught me in the concept of sovereignty.
Yes.
Which is, that is like my favorite concept. And I think about it all the time. Well, the last couple of days anyway.
It is so beautiful. Yeah.
So I've been playing around with this idea of identity versus sovereignty. And I was so excited to talk to you because I thought you could expand on that maybe a little bit.
Did you say identity? What did you say? What word?
Identity versus sovereignty. And if they're connected at all, or if they're opposing. I don't know. It's something I've been really thinking about myself. Did
you say divinity?
Identity.
Oh, identity. Sorry, I was breaking up for a sec. Boy, that's a really good concept. Identity is so interesting. Like when you think like, well, how would you identify yourself? And you're like, well, and you give all these terminologies, and really what we're doing is saying like, well, how I want others to perceive me as, or how like in contrast from you to me and what I value of myself. But sovereignty is saying, I identify myself as one with it. It's interesting. I'm detached from all things, like how you feel is separate from how I feel, but yet understanding also that my sovereignty is giving you permission to be in your sovereignty, which enables our sovereignty, which is like this rising consciousness of the collective. And identity is based more in personality, which is based in ego and contrast. And the ego is not a bad thing. The ego is actually an incredible gift. It's like our bodies go into shock when we experience physical trauma, and our soul body or emotional body goes into ego when we experience trauma of the soul. And all that ego has been, and I'm deviating the ego, but it's, I think, around identity, because we can only identify ourselves through this filter. And that's the contrast that we create our identities through, is the ego. But the ego is only protecting the innocence of our soul. which can never not be innocent.
Mhm.
This is an incredibly important point. We are pure light and we are pure love, and we are never not pure
Mhm.
light and pure love,
Mhm.
ever.
Mhm.
Our egos are the armor that protected. So the bigger the trauma, the bigger the ego. And yet at the end of the day, we can just tell our ego, we can come back into ourselves in our sovereignty and thank our ego and say, you don't have to protect me anymore. And I honor you. And thank you so much for protecting me. And thank you for taking the arrows and the slings and all those things, because you've kept me pure. And now I can, good job, essentially. And when we don't recognize that our ego is just a tool that's protected us, and there's all this ego death, and I've done all these programs where some people like, thank you for care, or thank you for sharing, fuck you for thank you for caring, fuck you for sharing. That's the thing of the ego. And I'm like, I don't like that narrative. It's like, honor your ego, but a place of sovereignty is to say, I no longer need my ego. I no longer need it. Like, I'm sovereign. I don't need your view of me is your view of me. It's nothing to do with my own truth of, I'm a being. So that's where identity is tied to ego versus sovereignty is tied to being in the presence of love and light. And like, I don't need a politician to come save me, a religion to come save me, a narrative to come save me. I am me. I'm connected. I've never not been connected to love and light. I never not will be connected to love and light. And a friend of mine, he said, God cannot not love you. I was like, what? God cannot not love you. Yeah, he's like, God cannot not love you because God is love.
Yeah. Right.
So then,
and if we're sparks of the divine, then we are love as well.
Exactly right. So we cannot not be in love. We're always in love. It's just when we forget and we're so trapped in this duality of the 3D existence of polarity and contrast and all these things. And we think that the issue is like, people think their identity is the truth. No, their identity is just for us to know that it's not the truth. Like to detach and like, whoa, look at all this stuff I've created with ego and in this form of pain and trauma and fear and worry and all this stuff. We've created this to look at it. But when we're in it thinking that we are our identity or we are our ego, that's where people get really stuck. Yeah. So I think detaching, that's been one word that's really stood out for me is detach. It's just detach. And I was on a psilocybin journey, sat in ceremony a couple of weeks ago, and I had this view of Jesus and how powerful he was, that he chose his form of death. And I talked about this on a podcast recently. He wasn't stoned, stabbed, hung, pushed off, drowned. I mean, he chose to die like this. This is just such an incredible teaching, whether people believe it or not, or it doesn't matter. It's just the point of this posture of like, I've detached from all things. Like I am not tied or tethered to identity so much as connected back to love and light. So sorry, a long answer for that question, but I think it's a really good question.
I know. I was like, I can't wait to talk to Lucas because he's definitely one person I wanted to hear your thoughts on about that.
Thank you. Thanks.
Would you consider yourself religious still?
No. But no, and I still love the Bible. I still love all my safers of Judaism and the Bhagavad Gita. I mean, I love these things. I'm not no longer though concerned with what is religion. We say like you're in or you're out. Do you believe these things? Well, then you're in. No one can tell me I'm in or not. I don't want to be in anything. Do I love many things? Do I talk about God and Jesus and can I talk about the Torah and in Hebrew? But am I in Judaism? No, I'm not. That said, I think religion's deep state. in a way, to not knock it, but it's that you can still find the truth. It's not that there's not truth in it. It's just freedom is saying, I love the meme, the fish comes up to another fish in a fishbowl and they're in the ocean and the fish in the ocean's like, come out and play. And the fish in the fishbowl is like, no, I can't. And it's like, no, you can. It's the same water. So that's why I guess it's the same water, but there's just so much more, so much more.
It's more of the idea that you have a direct connection to the divine and you don't necessarily need a middleman. That type of idea.
Yeah, I think, something that's interesting with the Bible versions, the King James Bible, which wasn't never called the King James Bible, it's called the Authorized Version. It came out in 1611, and it was 7 years publicly announced that this text would be given, and it was given it was written in a 5th grade reading level, because King James wanted the Bible to be in the common man's hands in the vernacular that they spoke at the time for 11-year-olds, if you think of the context of that. And the Vatican attempted 2 assassination attempts on his life to subvert and stop this Bible from coming out. And what I find really interesting about the text is John 14:6, in that says, Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father but by me. In every Bible version since 1881, the Revised Version all the way up to today and whatever new thing's going to come out, they changed the word by to through. I'm the way, the truth, the life. No man comes to the Father but through me. So if it's through, then you have to subjugate yourself to that door. But if it's by, it's an emulation. And that's really what I believe is what sovereignty is waking back up to, is this incredible being, this soul that chose this path to teach us a way, is saying, model me in your own life. You go back to source. You walk in love. You walk in light. You don't have to submit to another authority, because at any time we do that, we've lost our sovereignty. So at any point we make someone else a guru, a teacher, it's like, well, who am I? Where am I missing my own time, spending time in the divine, and my own downloads, and my own channeling, and my own time, and my own, that is what we are all. And can you imagine? And I think that's what 5D is waking up to, is that we are all going to be like, oh, I just get chills. We are reverberating this incredible love and light. And then we work together to co-create. We don't, it's not about, that's what I would say to that. So no, I'm not religious so much as spiritual, but I also appreciate methodologies. I think, in the 3D world, you need contrast. So religion creates a contrast of knowing for us to springboard off. And I don't think there's an accident that there's 5 major religions in the world, 5 fingers, and we have to come together like a fist to unify and understand what is the truth of the branch or the trunk before it branched off.
You do see a lot of parallels, don't you? Because you seem, so many different religions, but you can probably find common threads.
Oh, it's incredible. I was just telling someone the other day, all religions stem back to Abraham. All the 5 major religions stem back to Abraham. So God told Abraham, your seed will be as the stars of the sky and the sand of the sea. So Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, but then Abraham, Ishmael, you have Islam. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, you have Judaism. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, you have Christianity. Abraham to Hinduism. That's why Hinduism, the priests are the Brahmins. Abraham, Brahmins. Jews, Orthodox, my family on my wife's side is Orthodox, studies in yeshivas. Well, the god Shiva is the god of destruction. And what do they study? The law, to not be destroyed, to honor the law. You have Buddhism, you have the awakened one from Hinduism, coming from that path and realizing, to go within, but they all stem back to this. I think that's what's happening. We're all coming back, and not in this forced ecumenicalism to submit back into religion and saying, no, that the shell is no longer needed, but we're all waking back up to the truth of source and love and light and beauty. And it's interesting. I've had so many people on my podcast that have left Mormonism, have left Islam, have left, religion, Christianity, and yet we are more beautiful souls than we were in these forms. I mean, I fasted from Sunday night to Tuesday morning for 5 years in a row. I didn't swear. I didn't drink. I read, I studied, I prayed. I was like, and it was like, and so what? I still craved love. I still craved to know that I was okay, that I could say fuck you and God bless you in the same sentence, and still just being love and not, you know, I got emotional for a second, but just to no longer live in the terms and conditions of this world, but to rise above this world and realize that we are sent into this world to be light.
Mm-hmm. You were talking about soul contracts a little bit before with you and your wife.
Yeah.
You guys definitely planned that. You planned that before you incarnated this time.
100%. In fact, so when I shared that with her, about the emotional affair and was going through this healing journey, it created like a detonation in the family that I grew up in, because I started talking about, I was in so much pain, and then they judged me even more, and and it made me start seeking, like, well, what was going on in the house? I mean, I was like open. It just broke my mind wide open to, how did I even get here? Like, what the heck? And my mom escaped in the middle of the night. It just wild stuff happened. And I had an employee get paid to log into my iMessage in my company to message her to come out of hiding. And just the whole thing, like, my story is incredibly crazy and intense, which is why I was scared that I was going to be killed by these people. But I had gone through healing. We'd gone through all this stuff. I was in therapy, and I was on the path to healing, but I'll never forget, like maybe a year and a half into therapy, I'm going down the stairs. She's sitting, we had a house of daylight basement, so I could see her before I was going downstairs. And I'm like, wow, you really love me. And she's like, what? I'm like, you really love me. She's like, yeah, I love you. And I'm like, wow, like, to know what that really is. And her and I sat in ceremony together one time, and she told me that you say your love language is words of affirmation, but you're like a bathtub that I could fill up, but there's a drain that can't be plugged. And so it all pours out. And I'm looking at her in this ceremony and realizing that I'm causing rejection in her, which turned into resentment. And the reason is I was afraid subconsciously that if I'm hosting the Vulnerable Hero, I'm doing men's work, I'm helping now heal. And I realized, though, I was still afraid, if I truly, to the very thinnest layer, dropped the shield around my heart, what would that mean? Would I be killed? I was so afraid, truly, without hyperbole, that I was going to be killed by the people raising me, that I was scared that maybe my wife would, like, it was not logical. It's an ingrained emotional trauma. But I realized that even the 0.01% sheath that I had was creating rejection in her, because it wasn't enough. It was bouncing off me. And I was saying my love language, words of affirmation. And so that, from that point on, dropping that and being, for me, willing to die to drop the wall to receive her love, and her finally feeling loved, and me not needing words of affirmation anymore, and talking about soul contracts, and like, we all, and this is where it's taken my anger away. And even if anyone sees my TED Talk, I'm not indicting my abusers, or I'm not even talking about the abuser. It's talking about healing, because I wouldn't be here to speak what I'm speaking had I not gone through the darkest and most heinous things. So they did their job. And in that soul contract, I never would have wanted that. Maybe I did in a past life, but I wouldn't ever choose willingly. That would be terrible to do to other people. But I wouldn't be who I am had they not done what they'd done. So it takes away the judgment and the anger, and just really, I've come to this place of giving thanks for everything that's happened to me. And even though I wouldn't wish it on anyone or want to go through it again, I'm thankful I am this person today that can speak and help others, and spend time with you both, and be your cosmic soul brother.
I love it. Or wouldn't you think that's a common theme? I feel like we see that a lot with any light worker that we interview. There seems to be a common theme of like trauma, abuse, whether it's like sexual abuse or addiction, pretty rough marriages. It seems
Right.
so common.
It is. It's almost like everyone has to go to this dark, dark place before they can see the light.
Yeah.
And this common thread we're noticing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's why it's so important not to judge people,
Mhm.
because they're just one point. It's like taking a picture of, if we took a picture of us and said, oh, that's us. That's only one snapshot in, our life. And when we engage with others and we hold them to a moment, well, that moment might have led them to be the most glorious human to ever walk the planet. We don't know. And so it's so important not to judge, but to be a safe place for expression and to share. And because truth is like a groundhog. I say this, it burrows the truth inside of us, our truths. We all came here to speak our truths. We all came to be a point of light, a distinction of another point of light, to all utter forth our story. But truth is like a groundhog, and it wants to come up to breathe, but the minute it sniffs judgment in the air, you're not safe. It burrows down deeper, and some people have forgotten their truths. I certainly did, and took this like breaking in 2016 to remember why I was here. And so I've learned that where I went to this emotional intelligence program that radically changed my life. I had a born again experience, if there ever was one. And it's because no one judged me. They said, let it rip, get it out, go harder. Like, what else do you have to say? And I'm like, some very dark things I shared, and it was like, like I could breathe for the very first time in my life. Like I had lived underwater before that moment. And that's when I learned that where love is present, truth will come forth, resulting in a personal freedom. And the reason we're not free is because we don't know love. That's what I talked about in the bio. So vulnerability is having the courage to experience love in its purest form, to pierce through the veil of fear to on the other side. Like, this is incredible. And we would want everyone to come get on the other side of fear, like live in this freedom, live in non-victimhood, live in exuberance and life and in observation. And when energies are high and low, it's like, oh, what am I learning right now? Or what is this frequency? Or what have I called in? Or what have I, it becomes creation versus destruction and static. I think it's really the difference between life and death.
Is this something that you teach in some of your like men's retreats and things like that? Just how to remember your truth? Is that something that you have
Yes. It
protocol?
was, something I just developed because I did it on myself was picturing my my innocent child as if it was standing in front of me, and I had pictured him looking at me and just in pure unconditional love, just looking at me. And when I cried, remembering when I cried, he cried, and when I was happy, he was happy, and me realizing that the identity that I am, the personality that I am, the armor and ego that I am, protected that little boy, that he was never touched. He's as pure and beautiful as could ever be, but he was outside of me. And so the process that I take men through is they visualize their little boy and they remember just the joy and the beauty. And, for women too, I do this for women, but, to remember our little child and how much we love them and how much and receive the love that they have for us is just unconditional. And then we recognize in this process that I say, but you're tired and your little boy's tired and he's ready to come home, but he's not going to cross your will. And he's been waiting for you to ask him to come back in. And are you willing to take your armor off? So I have them take their armor off. I have them go through this process. A lot of men with the tight jaw, I have them take off the Iron Man mask. Every person has a mask and they can identify, but usually with a lot of men, it's the Iron Man mask, and to take that mask off and to take off this armor, and they drop it down. And then I say, tell that little boy what you want to tell him. And this is where, guys, just the hardest, toughest, grittiest man becomes a soft, beautiful soul in this moment. And he starts telling his little boy how much, he never deserved what happened. And I've always loved you. And I say, okay, now it's time to invite him in. And he's like, come in. I said, no, you have to invite him in. You have to ask him because he won't cross your will. We live under the law of free will. That is the universal truth that cannot be broken. You have to invite him in. So will you come into me? And I'm like, he's coming in, he's coming in. And he's coming in you and he's filling from your earlobes to your hair, to your fingertips, down to your toes. Like, do you feel him? Like, breathe him in. And physically, men transform. They look like two different people at the beginning. We started doing pictures before and after. They didn't know what I was doing. I was just taking pictures of guys, but they look different. All the hardness, the harshness is just melted away in love. And they know that their innocence, they've always been innocent. Religion says, well, sex, if you have sex, you're dirty or you're wrong or all these things. Like, God, the whole world is built on making us feel dirty when we've always been clean. We just forgot. And so there's a lot of things that I do at the retreat, but that's the main integration of bringing innocence back in. And it's really just remembering, but there's this ceremony and process of it.
It sounds a little bit like teaching divine masculine, divine feminine principles. Like
100%. Yes.
Our Western society would think that masculine is the hard exterior, the tough guy that don't show emotions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Never surrender, that type of idea. But
well, it totally. With women, women have two X chromosomes. What if you look at an X can receive on all sides, but men have this unique Y chromosome, and a Y can only receive when it's in balance. If the masculine is wounded, and this goes for women too, but this is just how I use this teaching. When when our feminine gets wounded as children, when we get hurt, we're wide open, connected to source, free. We're talking, we're living, we're playing, we cry, we laugh, we're just free. And as soon as that gets hurt, we learn very on to receive, to be open to receive is very painful. So then we're over in our masculine. This is typically for men. We're over in the masculine, and then we're in masculine takes. It provides, but it also takes. So in the wounded masculine, we're taking sex, drugs, addiction, media, games, sports. It's never enough to heal that desire to receive love. And so having the courage, and that's why it's so courageous to come back to that place and be in balance of feminine energy to receive so that I can give. Because if I don't receive, I cannot give that what I don't have. And it's not about gender. This is something that's so interesting. Gender, our whole society is built on identity politics and genders, and who cares? We're talking about masculine and feminine energy. Like, I mean, not to knock anyone, but I was just saying, like, let's talk about healing before we talk about particulars of these other things. Like, can you receive love? Do you say no? If someone goes to open a door for you, like, I got it, or well, that's rejecting love. Now take that, compound that on a huge level. And so at one of the men's retreat, I have the men pair up. They're with a pair the whole weekend, a buddy, and two guys prepare the entire meal. They cook the entire meal for the rest of the men, to the point where the men that receive cannot even pick up a napkin or salt their food. The men that cook have to do everything. And so you watch some guys get triggered, like to have someone cut their food for them or put more salad on their plate for them. And what it does is it's triggering guys to have an issue receiving.
Interesting.
It's also triggering the guys to have an issue serving.
Yeah. Interesting.
And it is so beautiful. I mean, that's just like one little thing that we do, but yeah, the guys have to receive, and we get to learn how to receive again, and in safety, because we're standing in our own power and our own sovereignty, that no one's going to take anything from us anymore. We're safe. We've gone through the trauma. We're not the little children anymore, powerless, voiceless. We are kings and queens. We're powerful beings. So it's safe to receive again. And yeah, That's what we do.
These principles that you're talking about, are these things that you instill in your kids
Yes. Yes.
as they're growing up?
It's interesting that like the first thing that pops in my mind of what I teach my children is that no one's perfect.
Yeah.
I'm not perfect. I apologize to my children all the time for a little thing. Like, I can't even think of something big, but I want to model apologizing and being humble and not saying like, well, that's just the way it is. Or so that no one, this image, even though we're perfect as we are, but this performance perfection is the facade and this terms and condition. And we talk about, I receive your love. That's one of the things we say in our family. Instead of I love you, is I receive your love.
I
I
love
receive your
that.
love. I receive your love. Because I realized that at that retreat with my wife, the greatest act of love I could give her was to receive her love. And me not receiving fully her love created the rejection in her, like her love was not sufficient to love me.
Mhm.
And so, and here's what's interesting. Ahava is the Hebrew word for love, and ahava means to give. So love always gives.
Interesting.
And the greatest act of love we can give is to receive. So we say, I receive your love. I'll hold my kids and look them in the eyes and like hold their heads and say, I receive your love. I receive your love. I receive. And they'll say it back. And it's really just beautiful. So that's a principle that we teach is, yeah, I receive your love is actually giving love.
Mm-hmm. I love that. That is incredible.
Mm.
Absolutely.
It is, it's incredible for me to watch too. It really is beautiful and powerful.
Mm-hmm. Do you teach them divine feminine, divine masculine principles? Or you do it by example?
So far, I mean, they're 8, 6, and 4, so they're a little young, but more in like the teaching of, how I receive your love is, eventually I'll explain more like particulars of that. But we're talking about, they ask, about God and is God male or female? I said, neither. There's inseparable oneness with God, that we are gender to create, but God is one. Therefore, there's no separation in God. Even Jesus says God is a spirit. He's not a man. God is a spirit. Those that worship him must worship him in spirit and truth. And what is they put the Shema, Hear, O Israel, the Lord of God is one, and thou shalt love the Lord the God with all the heart, soul, mind, and strength. God is one. We are part of God. We are one. The great veil and lie is identity, ego, separation, division, all these things. And so teaching that, and I'm explaining to them that gender, and this is so, I think, just important it's important for me to teach right now. And so something I'm teaching and talking a lot about is gender is 3D in the sense that it's contrast. But where we're going and where we've come from, there's just sovereignty. There's just a oneness. And it's interesting, like Revelation, the book of Revelation, Revelation 1:6 says, and he has made us kings and priests unto God his Father. And I've been around a lot of people, and this is not, I'm not even saying this for Christian. It's just a interesting point that people are like, well, king, priest, is that like male? I'm like, no, that's sovereignty. That's a position. It's an authority. It hasn't, like, we must detach from this like duality of 3D and realize that in a king, there's nothing above a king. And a priest, there's nothing above a priest. So it's just a matter of authority and position that we can walk in, not a matter of like
boy, girl.
Yeah, like the bride of Christ. Oh, is that female? No, it's the marriage coming back to one. And what does Christ mean? Christ means freedom. Christ means Messiah, which means deliverer, which means one who brings freedom. So the bride of Christ is that which merges back into freedom. And like, and it has nothing to do with church and religion and belief and just principles. And they all have different words. Like the Hopi, sorry, I'm talking a lot, but the Hopi Indians prophesied of 144,000 rainbow warriors. And John on the island of Patmos writes down 144,000 virgins that come back in the last days. Well, virgin just means the kept one from fear, one who stayed in love. It has nothing to do with sexuality. And did you have sex before? This is so stupid. It's like, no, did you stay in love? Yeah, those warriors of love and light who are here Those numbers, 144,000, written by two different people, and there's other prophecies of 144,000, but two different people, two different times, two different languages, two different cultures, two different paths, talking about the exact same thing. And that's the oneness of receiving from source to speak truth. And that's why we can't say, well, this is the wave. It's like,
Yeah. Do you know much about your past lives? Is that something you've delved into?
so interesting. I have dove into them. I'm going to do a past life regression with Crystal is the energetic alchemist. I don't know if you follow her, but
Awesome.
she's amazing. And I'm going to do a past life regression with her. Yeah, I've done them. I think they're,
Maybe that's too personal.
no, I mean, I have been, well, I just don't want to sound self-grand. There's been some really interesting things. There's been some interesting things. And I really believe that I'm here now at this time to teach love and light and not die this time. As I've been killed many times by those that seek to suppress love and light. And this time I'm not going to die. So anyway, that's as detailed as, yeah. But I still want to go more into it. What'd you say?
You think you were in Atlantis? Super random question.
I don't know. And I've done like starseed. I think I was in Egypt, ancient Egypt. I don't know if I was in Atlantis, but yeah, they like come from Andromeda or someone said, I don't know, the star systems and the starseed stuff I'm fascinated with. I haven't gotten anything like I aligned with the Andromedan thing, but then someone else told me some other thing. And I was like, yeah, maybe, I don't know. It's all fascinating. I love it all. I'll say that. I think it opens people's consciousness and awareness even to go through that process and do readings. And it's really beautiful.
Maybe help bring you closer to what your soul purpose is or your mission is in this life,
Yes. I still feel even right now, like I feel a deeper craving to know. Yeah. But it's beautiful. The reason I'm hesitating, I'm not trying to, I don't want to be some guy getting on here like talking about myself the whole time. And like, oh, this guy thinks it. I'm just here to show love, teach people love. Yeah.
Yeah. So you were mentioning earlier about light workers, and I'm curious, how could our listeners know if they're a light worker or a light warrior? Do you have any insight into how someone would know?
Well, truly, I think we all are. I think every single person is a light worker, so I'm going to use a Bible verse again, but Romans 8:28 says, and we know all things work together for those who love God, who are the called according to his purpose. But if you replace the word God with love, and we know all things work together for those who love love, who are called according to love's purpose. So we're all light, and whatever we're going through right now, and our acknowledgement of love, that's the first step to working. So that word working together, all things work together. What is a light worker? A light worker is someone that can say the shadows, the dark, the fear, the pain, the trauma, all these things. Let me reveal that these things have worked together for you to know how bright you truly are. It didn't extinguish your light. It's here for you to say, wow, whoa, honor your light, wake up to your light. And everyone has their own gift. There's teachers, there's people that can just sit and not speak at all, but create such a energetic space that liberate whole towns, whole country, whole galaxies. There's some people that speak. There's some people that work with energy with their hands. There's some people that can just meditate and consciously, telepathically communicate with another person and wake up that consciousness in them. So I do think that every person has a special, unique gift, and that every person is a light. We would not be here on this planet if we weren't already light workers. But there's younger souls, there's older souls. I think there's people that wake up sooner to that. But even if someone's listening to this podcast, there's no doubt in my mind at all that you're a light worker, you're a light warrior, you're a light, what are these words? They're just terms of context for us, but you are the light. You are the light of the world. Jesus gave no qualifications. Yeshua gave no qualifications. So you're the light of the world. Everyone's like, wait, what? You've forgotten. You've forgotten. Wake up. Remember who you are. You're the light. And that's what light workers do. They just wake people up to them being light.
And how would you define the ascension process then, and maybe what roles the light workers have in that process?
I think is creating space, whatever that looks like or whatever that is creating to be a safe space for another person to share their truth so that they can be free. And so there are some light workers that, for instance, are truly going into the depths of darkness to pull people out. Like for instance, the child trafficking, those are light workers actually physically doing things. They're light workers. They're not necessarily moving energy, although they would need energy to be there and to pull them out. And there's others that are meditating right now somewhere, holding space for us to have this beautiful conversation. And they may not even know, or we might not even know who they are, but they're holding space. And so the ascension process, I really believe, is to go within first and really spend time, like not be so concerned with what to do, but what to detach from, and breathe and remember, like the prana is like, just bring it in and spend time getting to know ourselves. And then we can realize, like I wrote this the other day, that our pain is our power and our trauma is our treasure. And we all have unique treasures. Not to make, it's 11:11, or it's 1:11 right now. It's beautiful. And not to, and this is not a political thing in any way, shape, or form. So I don't want anyone to take it as political, because it's not, even though I'm going to use a political term right now in our consciousness. But the term mega, I've been fascinated with, like, how did this originate? How is this even a thing that people talk the word mega? Because mega is singular. For magi, which is plural. The magi, the three wise kings that brought their treasure to Jesus, this whole symbology, we're at this time of awakening again, where all of us wake up to that we are our own king and priest. We are our own mega, which is so bizarre. I mean, mega existed before this political movement, that term, but it's interesting. It's in our consciousness all of a sudden again. I don't think that's accidental, that we are waking in consciousness. You could hate Trump, love Trump. That's not the point of what I'm talking about. It's just, it's in our consciousness again to remind us that, we all have our own unique treasures to bring to this world. That what is my treasure? What is your treasure? And look, they brought incense, frankincense, and myrrh. And I might bring, healing from sexual abuse and getting beat and all these things. And someone else might bring, I never was held. I never was told I was good enough. And that's as traumatic as getting violated for me, because that was their trauma. And someone else is like, they grew up with everything, but it was never good enough. We all bring our treasures. And then together, it's like collectively, like to the world. And I really think why the Galactic Federation of Light, why all the interdimensional beings are here right now, is because humans have this unique gift that we've been given, that we were made in light. We're made in the image of light. We come from light. We are light, but we were put into this dense darkness of third dimensional darkness. And we are waking up right now. It's almost like shiny, like piercing the darkness. And every other dimensional being has been in light. They didn't they weren't in darkness. So everyone's watching us, and we are actually the teachers. Yes, we're going to learn things from them and different things because we've been stuck in this dimension, but how one is light and piercing through darkness and exposing the light through the dark density, that is a tremendous gift that we are given right now.
That is fascinating because as humans, well, I'll speak for myself, but I have the tendency to kind of revere light beings, you know, like, I have the tendency to think that they're above us, but it is fascinating to think that they might be looking down and also appreciating what we are doing as well.
Yeah, that's why they're reminding us, like, hey, keep going. You are light. We are of the same. We're all made. The one infinite creator created it all. But they weren't ever in the density like we've been in the density. They're not saying that they haven't been or their path, but right now, the celebration is for humans to awaken, and everyone is celebrating. Everyone. I mean, this is like I have been feeling this, seeing this. I woke up in the middle of the night a couple weeks ago, and I was like, whoa, I felt there is coming a time very soon, a day very soon, that every human on planet Earth is going to be celebrating at the exact same time, no matter the time zone. If it's 2 a.m. and it's 11 a.m., everyone is going to be celebrating at the exact same time that we have overthrown the darkness off this planet. And at that celebration, everyone is going to be celebrating. It's going to be the vibrations and the reverberation throughout all existence is going to be so incredible that when the Great Awakening map talks about the great solar flash, that basically what happened, it's not from our sun, it's from some other sun. I don't even know what, but it goes through the entire universe and universes and all that is, and just cleans it out. It's like, you can almost imagine like all humans on planet Earth celebrating and just exuding light, and it's gonna be,
that gives me goosebumps.
It gives me goosebumps. I couldn't go back to, I was like, I felt it. It was almost like and I got that picture of Zion from the Matrix 3 when finally like there was no more threat and they all celebrated, but unfortunately they were driven in like Middle Earth or underground, but we're going to be on ground with Mother Earth.
That sounds glorious.
Yeah, it will be. We'll do another podcast when that happens.
Feel, love it.
Oh, yeah.
We want to be super respectful of your time. I know we've kept you for an hour about.
Oh, this is awesome. Thank you. Both of you. Thank you.
Thank you for coming on.
I'm so honored to be on and just create with you. I really think you're both beautiful in what you're doing and what you're creating and the space you're holding and all the people. Like, just being honored to be one of the guests that you've had is really beautiful. So thank you.
Thank you for saying that.
Yes, and thank you.
Would you mind sharing for our listeners, because I'm sure people would want to contact you or follow you or learn more about your work? Where would you like them to go?
They can go to my website. It's lucasmack.com. Or Instagram is really or YouTube, but Instagram is really where I have been spending the most time and content. And my handle's Lucas James Mack, or you can just go to my website at lucasmack.com.
Right on.
Yeah. Thank you, sisters. It's an honor being on with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so to our listeners, if you've enjoyed today's discussions, please like and subscribe to our channel, and we look forward to bringing you more conscious conversations. And thank you again to Lucas, our cosmic soul brother here on Cosmic Soul Sisters. I'm Shara.
I'm Leah.
And we're sending you all light and love. Thank you for your infectious love and light, Lucas. We appreciate you and everything that you're doing too.
Thank you.